is Israel. People call me Izzy. I'm 24. I'm the oldest of three brothers. My parents and I came to the US when I was 2 years old. At first, we lived in Spanish Harlem. Then we moved to the Bronx. I lived in the Bronx since I was about maybe 8, 9 years old. Both of my younger brothers are citizens, but as you guys know, I'm undocumented, but I am a DACA recipient. I ended up going to a private all-boys middle school from elementary because one of my teachers, helped me out. And I think that was basically the moment that changed a lot of my life. I was able to go to this great school. I met amazing teachers, great educators. It changed a lot of my worldview. And I think it definitely set the tone for who I was going to become. I ended up going to a great high school, even though there were issues in high school too with my status, but I went to Bronx Science, kind of became a little less focused as a student in high school. I was like on the soccer team. I had my first girlfriend. I was more worried about like partying and like hanging around, being popular. But yeah, I had a great time in high school. Luckily, I was able to get into a great college. I went to Baruch, and Baruch is where I started to become who I really am today. Went into Baruch thinking I was going to be a business major. That completely changed. I did English and political science with a minor in Black and Latino studies. I joined a fraternity around my college years. It is a Latino fraternity. There's a lot of toxic masculinity in there too that I have to deal with and cope with as well, and something that I'm trying to work on changing. But it's definitely, I think, a flaw in manhood as well. And I'm here today, still trying to learn. And I just mentioned these things because these are all things that affected who I became today.
So as you may all know, me by my first name, Aldo. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a rising sophomore in John Jay College and all that. But beyond that, like if we're going back to like history, I came here when I was like a year old. We used to live upstate in Lockport, New York. That was fun. I used to live there for like 8 years. We moved down here for whatever reason. So yeah, I've been here ever since I was like 9. I went to charter school. So that was chill. That was pretty fun. High school, I didn't do much. I never partied. I didn't go out like that because my parents were strict as hell. It wasn't until college, I guess, that I really started partying. My undocumented status was more of a focus for me along senior year. Freshman to junior year, I wasn't really thinking about, college or like how my status would affect me. That's when I joined the YC as well, senior year, like really joined them. I'm a political science major, minoring in Latinx studies.
So I'm 18, right? I've lived in Brooklyn ever since I was 2 years old, right? Came in when I was 2 years old with my parents and everything. We always lived in Brooklyn in like the same neighborhood. Like I went to middle school in the same neighborhood as well. So elementary and middle school was in the same building. And then after that, I went to high school, graduated high school. And now I'm about to do my first semester at City Tech. Yeah, I just been in Brooklyn my whole life, essentially. Yeah, I never really explored like other boroughs until like my senior year in high school. But before that, all I knew was Brooklyn.
Do you guys think you feel more comfortable like hanging out with each other from the YLC? Because I know there's a lot of women in the space.
Well, for me, I guess I'd say so. I don't really go out with them like that. I very rarely make plans. Like when I was in the office, I like I would do whatever I can, but I go out and like interact and But I guess outside I've never really done much. Like now I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, same with me. Like yeah, I've hung out with them like through like YLC events, right? But I've never hung out with them like something that's not related to YLC, right? And when I do, it's not like I feel weird around them. It's like a different type of vibe.
Because we're all the eldest brothers, all in immigrant households, right? So what do you think are some of the things you guys had to unlearn or maybe were challenged in when you were entering this space, coming from that background? And like, because, we come, our households can be very misogynistic and sexist and, all these other isms. So what are some of the things that you guys think you had to unlearn or maybe it was uncomfortable for you coming in?
For me, I guess for a lot of it, I know a lot of people would say, they don't consider themselves sexist or, racist or colorist or all that. And I would say that as well. So I guess in a sense, I'm not sure what I have to unlearn. Lupe has told me a lot about this as well. Giving me a book as well to read. Lupe, if you watch this, I'm so sorry. I still haven't read the book. There's a lot of machismo in like in a lot of Latinx culture. I guess sometimes when it comes to like chores or whatever, I don't know, not so much chores. I guess when like my dad comes home and like he sees me and my sister not doing anything. He's like, he goes to my sister first, like, oh, why didn't you do anything? Blah blah blah. But for the most part, like beyond that, they don't really say much. For a lot of like Latinx households, the man can go out and
Yeah.
the daughter can't. Blah. Man, I be stuck at home. They be like, yo, if you can't go out, she can't go out. When it comes to cleaning and all that, I'll be cleaning OD every day. My sister be sleeping. She slumped every single day. The only thing I leave for her, right? Because she has to do like at least something to help me out, and like so my parents don't get mad. I'm like, yo, bro, just do the dishes because I hate the dishes so much. That's literally the worst chore. If there was a hierarchy of chores, I'd say cleaning dishes is the worst.
I don't know. I tried thinking right now, and I can't think of anything like at the top of my head. But I know there's definitely a lot of things that I had to unlearn. Not necessarily that came from like my household. I'm gonna say just like from the environment, like who I was surrounded by, and like how I just like how things were portrayed to me, right? Like when I went to Wild Sea, I remember having to like think what I'm gonna say before I say it, because when I first got there, I know there were a lot of things I said that were very like controversial, right? And I remember, yeah, I remember one instance, I said something that like sort of crossed the line, and so they had to have like a little talk with me, and that's when I realized like, oh, like I should have thought before I said this, and like I'm like, why do I think like that? Like I just realized like it all came back from like who I was surrounded by. I guess like in my household, it would be like kind of like the same thing like chores. I remember like helping my dad with like the cleaning where he used to work, right? He used to like at the end of the day, he used to clean like the whole area. And I remember I was there, I'd help him. I'd also make my own money, but I'd help him, right? Like I'd sweep, I'd like mop, and people be looking at me weird. And I'm just there, I'm listening, right? And I'm like, what's wrong with me doing this, And then one time they was like, oh look, he mops like a girl, and I'm like, what does that mean? Like, is that bad? Is that good? Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, why is that? Like, I'm just trying to do my job, That was kind of weird for me. That was kind of crazy to think about. It was like, damn, like they really think that we can't like do this because it's not like our like I'm gonna say like our job, So it's like it's weird for them to see that.
I don't know. I just find it weird that people find it like like you're saying weird that people know how to like men know how to sweep or blah blah or cook or basic necessities. They're like, wow, he really can sweep. Shaking my head, like what? What you mean? What you mean I can sweep? Like the way my mom says, like if like the next day you don't like you move, how are you gonna be able to do all that?
I think it's good that your parents tried to inculcate that into you. I'm the oldest brother, so my mom and my dad are both very traditional, kind of old school, like Mexican parents. Super masculine on my dad's side. And then my mom, like she truly, truly believes it is her job as my mother, basically to baby me. Like that was like her whole thing. She would do things for me that I didn't necessarily ask her to do, but she just like thought that it was just like her job, And I think you guys probably know a little bit. Like there's also the thing in Mexican culture where they think you're supposed to stay with your parents basically until you get married, and then that's when you leave. So I recently moved out of my parents' house. I moved to Brooklyn. And one of the main reasons that I did that too was because I thought that it was pretty sexist that I continue to live in my parents' house because my mom would feel imposed upon. Like I would clean my room or do my laundry or whatever, like eventually, but she just felt that it was her need to do it. So she would just do these things for me. So I felt that the only way to grow out of that or to force that change to happen was to move out completely. And it was like tough for her and it was tough for me to to navigate that. And they didn't really understand it and like they don't really get it. And it challenges the whole like norms of Mexican culture and their families and stuff, especially with the oldest boy. But I just thought that it was unfair to do that. So you guys are both in your teen years, but I'm sure you both have an idea of what manhood is or what people expect manhood to be. What are some of the things that you think are expected of you as a man or stereotypes or whatever that you guys don't think are right or you guys think you wish you could change?
One thing off the top of my head would be like showing no emotions, because that's like seen as like the worst thing possible, right? And it's like why can't they show emotion though, you know? And I feel like that sometimes is what leads to like a lot of other things. Like one of them could be like violence, right? Like building up all that emotion because like you're not supposed to show it or whatever. That would be one of the things I would change. Because like everybody has emotions. I feel like everybody should be like able to show them.
Word. Emotion is something I guess that's very, very big when it comes to like a man. You can't really show your emotion because you'll be deemed as weak. And I guess for me, I've really ingrained that into myself. For me, it's more or less like showing like the fact that if I'm sad or like or like something's bothering me, I'm not gonna show it, right? Because I'm not trying to seem like I'm picky or whatever. I'm learning it to slowly unlearning the fact that feeling is good. You crying isn't that's weak. However you express your emotions, express them. That's what I've been trying to live by. But it's hard because like you like, oh, no puedo llorar because you know soy un hombre or whatever. Or they be like, oh, quiero llorar, like man, leave me alone. I'm really gonna cry if y'all keep saying that.
You guys think it's worse being the eldest brothers?
I'll say just because I have so much to lead or like so much to leave behind. I gotta show my sister how to do X or Y, and I guess being undocumented on top of it is kind of different. Just because my sister is, like she was born here, whatever. So it's different, and so she has a lot more opportunities than I do when it comes to like education and blah blah. And seeing her grow up, trying to help her with whatever she's doing. So I guess for a lot of it, you're told as the older brother, what you should do. You have a bunch of rules. You're aiming to be like blah blah A+ student. Mom and dad. You're undocumented too, so you're like, I have to do it for my parents. And so you have so much weight on top of you. Your parents might be, or your guardians might be a little less strict with your siblings now because you
Yeah.
took all the blows for them, and now you're feeling like it's unfair because you're like, oh, why can they do this but I can't?
Dude, my parents were so strict when I was growing up. They were so strict that they didn't let me watch Dragon Ball Z as a kid because they saw one time on Univision that this kid was watching it, and when he was playing on his roof, he accidentally fell off his roof and died. And it was just like from that, it was just like so many examples of that. But that's just one clear one that I remember in my mind. It's really hard because my parents never hit me, but my dad was very, very like verbally, like abusive, like really horrible stuff. I've had some bad experiences with him. So I always thought to myself, I can't show emotions, like I can't cry, I can't do all these things. And I think it pent up a lot of anger and sadness.
Yeah.
Especially when I was a late teenager, when I was in my early 20s. Because it's hard too, because even like just being immigrants, like our parents aren't going to completely understand, college stuff is like. I try my best now to be open with my friends, to talk about my emotions, sometimes I journal. Just knowing that these things that you feel are valid, I think are important. I'll cry at least once or twice a week sometimes just to feel things, just to go through things. But it took me a lot of time to get there, and it took me a lot of work to get to that point. And I'm 24 now, and it wasn't always like this. Have you guys found some outlets to express your emotions, or is it something that you guys are still working on?
I mean, I guess the only way is like by going outside. That's the only thing that I see that relieves me. Like I go outside, I go for a walk, like I go for a bike ride, and yeah, that's what relieves me. Like that's how I take away the stress, emotions. Like I like to write my stuff down, I write it down, or like I just like do like whatever comes to my head. Or I just go to sleep. I just go to sleep sometimes. Like music, like headphones on. I just go to sleep. That's it.
Yeah, I think it's tough to find healthy outlets sometimes. I think one of the things that helped me the most processing those things was being able to talk to other men that weren't necessarily had the same exact background as me, but understood the things I was going through. I think it makes you realize you're not going alone through it, I think it's important to learn how to communicate in a healthy way with other women and understanding that not all relationships with women have to be like sexual or romantic, I think that's another toxic thing that happens with men, that we have to feel like every relationship we have with a woman has to have that involved. But yeah, I say that also to offer up that if you guys ever want to, talk or say anything, you want to process, I'm open, I'm here. And I know that it's tough to deal with these things when you feel like no one else understands,
I did want to highlight on what Izzy was saying. You know, what's it called, having friendships with women
Yeah.
and friendships with men, blah blah blah. That's a very big thing that I've been thinking about lately, because a lot of my friends are women. I guess sometimes I think about it, I'm like, if a lot of my friends are women, I barely have any male friends, like, blah blah, doing something wrong, blah blah, or whatever. And sometimes just like, maybe I do want more male friends, but like I know a lot of like the people that blah blah are kind of problematic, and I'm not really trying to be like, trying to be talking about all that.
Yeah, it's one of the most toxic things about being a man, like having the expectations of like conquering women, like seeing women as objects and just ways to show how manly you are instead of like seeing them as human beings. And
Mm-hmm.
personally, that's one of the things I had to work a lot on when I was younger, um, especially with some of my exes that I treated them in a very poorly way often, being super misogynistic and super sexist and having to reflect on a lot of the damage that I caused as well when I was younger. But yeah, that's definitely not a good way to view your relationships, and it's definitely not a healthy way to navigate. And I think it impedes a lot of our own personal growth. What do you think are some of the most toxic aspects of growing up the way we did, not only as men, but like as immigrant sons, like, the kind of things that we had to go through? What are some of those things that you think really really are damaging to young boys like us?
I think, like, off the top of my head is that like women uh, do like a lot of the household work or like the chores, whether it be cleaning or cooking or whatever. I think that's one of the biggest, like, most toxic things. In the beginning, they try to push onto me and my sister, but for a lot of it, we just weren't with it. At least I wasn't with it, mainly just because it's weird. It's weird. Like, if I don't know. I don't know for what reason, but it's like, if I'm not doing anything and my sister just chilling, why is she gonna be yelled at for blah blah not cleaning, right? Like, I guess it's like, for me, it's been like more of a protective thing as to why, like, they're doing, like, I'm like, bro, if I'm not doing anything and she's not doing anything, and then y'all coming at her for not cleaning whatever y'all think isn't cleaned, or not doing food, it's weird. I know for a lot of, like, people, that's something that they grew up with, like the idea that, oh, tu hermana debe que arreglar, right? And I know a bunch of my friends have these type of households just because they live in it.
I think one of the most damaging things growing up the way that we might have was definitely like the sexuality and gender stuff. I think for our parents, there's so much blatant homophobia, so much blatant like transphobia, all these other things. It's just like they're so opposed to anything that isn't like cis, heterosexual relationships. It was very damaging for me growing up too, because like my sexuality is still something that I grapple with to this day. And I think that I had a lot of negative experiences with my parents and with my dad in particular growing up that basically like scared me into a position where I knew it wasn't something I could explore or like talk about or think about. And just being able, just even having the chance to move out, it's like a big privilege and a big thing that a lot of people don't get to do. Some people end up dead for just being who they are. And I think it's horrible, and I think it's one of the most limiting things for young boys, because we're taught, like, it goes on with everything we're saying. You're supposed to get a beautiful woman, get married, have kids, be providing, but we never question why that is. Why are we supposed to get married? Like, why do we have to think about sexuality in terms of conquest and not in terms of love? It's so sad, and it's so like painful when you think about it. Like, I can't even imagine what some of these kids are going through, like to have to deal with that and to never get to be who they really are and to be ashamed for feeling how they feel. And I think hopefully, the more we talk about it, the more we learn and help each other, I think the better it can be.
I guess for me, it would be like going back to like the emotions, right? I don't really remember much of my childhood, right? But one of the things I really don't remember is like my father being like showing emotion towards me,
Mm-hmm.
being like, oh, like going up to you, hugging you, being like, I love you, this and that, right? I don't
Like
remember
showing
that, right?
affection.
So then, like, as I got older, like, I felt weird saying like, oh, like going up to my dad being like, oh, I love you, dad, or like just giving him a simple hug. Like I felt weird doing that, right? And like
Horrible.
yeah, it's just like, and I like he's unlearned that like throughout the years. I've seen it with like my siblings, right? Because he acts different with my siblings than from like what I think he acted, like how he acted with me when he was younger. So I feel like he's definitely changed on that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I had to go through that, but I can completely relate. My dad was, oh my God, he was so cold and so like, I mean, obviously he showed some love here and there, but like he was just so cold and so like always making comments, never showing love or affection. Like, obviously being proud of me here and there. Just, I mean, I was like I never did anything too out of the ordinary, but like, it's so weird seeing this shift now as an adult because now he wants to be like, he wants to be all cool, and it's just like it's hard for me to just forget so much of the pain that he caused me when I was younger. And it's just like so hard for me to be like, where was this person when I was a little kid? Like I don't I don't need it as much now. Like I needed it back then. And it's just like it's hard because then you also have to think, I'm lucky to have my dad around. I'm lucky that he's still alive. And it was even worse because he got really sick with COVID. He like lost 20 pounds. We were really worried about what was going to happen to him. And it just made me feel guilty about the feelings that I had. But I think it's okay to understand that your feelings are valid and that, it's not wrong. You were just a kid, and I'm sure your parents loved you and you're still loved, but it's tough. And I think that's why one of my goals soon too is to like seek therapy for real, because it's like you have to like unlearn that stuff.
If I can go back to the sexuality question, yeah, I guess for a lot of it, it's like you're not really allowed to express a lot of your, you know, how you feel, blah blah. And I guess that goes into a lot of what Fernando's saying as well, like when it comes to emotions and it comes to like sexuality and like what you feel, and all that. But I guess for my family, it's a little bit less traditional. My uncle's gay, so he's been chilling. He lives with us. He invites his boyfriend over. In the beginning with my mom, it was like, but now she's like, she doesn't really care. Sometimes they're out of pocket though. They're like, oh, because my great aunt be coming up and she's very religious, but she still, in some way she accepts my uncle, but she doesn't, like how people be saying, I accept who you are, but I respect you as a person, but I don't, respect, like your sexuality or whatever. That's just how she is. So she be chilling with him, but then she be pulling out the Bible, talking about, in this verse right here, it says, that was my first introduction to like, what it means, like sexuality and like the idea like of people like, and so I guess I was exposed to that. I'm like, oh, this is, I didn't really think about it much. He's like, yeah, that's very true. On the topic of cold fathers, yeah, I agree. Dads be weird as hell with emotion. They think, not telling your son, not telling your son this or that is like, yo, I'm hard. Like, nah, bro, I'm like 10. Please tell me you love me, please. Like, I don't know. I never really thought about it much, just because like when I was upstate, my dad used to work OD. So it's like, it's whatever. For me, I never really placed much emphasis on like I love yous from my dad or all that, right? Because admittedly, they did love me in whatever way. My mom showed me she loved me, my dad showed me she loved me, and I understood that. And I understand that in some places that's I'm privileged to have that, to have both my parents be there and love me for whatever. I guess in the aspect I was struggling is like to be respected and to be seen as like my own individual from them, because for a lot of it, like you're saying, your sometimes your mom, she babies you, right? And like when you're at a certain age, you're like, bro, I can do this. And for me, I guess it ties back to feeling kind of weak, right? To like please don't do this for me. I know I can do this for myself. And I guess for a lot of it, I've been striving to seek like approval and like to have my parents be proud of me, right? Like, kid, like, oh, I'm proud of you. They don't do that, right? They've never done that. They've always thought like that should be the bare minimum, and that's something I've always struggled with, and I've always tried to like go. I don't know. It's kind of affected the way I work. I can see as well. Like hearing my parents say like I'm proud of you is something I always wanted. I've always desperately wanted to hear.
So
Like without me telling them, without me like, are you proud of me? Like I've always like, please tell me you're proud. Like without me even saying anything. I remember one time
Oh,
I
thank
cried
God.
to my great aunt. I cried to my great aunt because I was so frustrated. It was like when I was working with the YLC, like we were in the office, we were doing whatever. It was like I think Icon or whatever, and we were just like packed with the work, right? And I was so stressed, and my parents were always on me. They're like, "Oh, why are you always out? Why I see this? Why I see that? I never see anything though." And I'm like, Bob, I'm not trying to compare their work to like whatever I do, right? I'm not trying to compare, manual labor like from
Mm-hmm.
early morning to all the way. So like what I'm doing, I'm not trying to say like I'm more tired than them, right? But they
Yeah.
always take it like that. They always take it like that. And so for a lot of it, it's just them being like, nah, it's not work. It was like me being mad frustrated in the beginning. It's a lot of like I want approval from my parents, right? I mean, just so
Yeah.
I can feel like, oh, what I'm doing is good, blah blah. Because I never really heard that, right? I've been struggling with that, feeling like I need to show out and go above for them because of my status of like my first gen older brother, whatever. I always have to show up for something and like do more, or at least try to do more because I'm trying to impress them. And I've learned, I've been seeing like halfway along the line, like I guess I shouldn't do. I'm not doing it for them at this point. I'm doing it for me, right? It's something that I should learn that to do, like whether it be my academics, my work, whatever. I'm no longer gonna seek approval from like, oh, I'm proud of you. It's more or less, I'm doing this for me. Blah blah. I gotta build up whatever I have to build up, and hopefully down the line they'd be like, pretty good. You did that.
That's really rough. Because you
Or
wish you had that, but it's just like you
word.
also have to. I mean, my thoughts always like obviously no one did that for them, so they never had that. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of both of you guys, and I think you should both be proud of the work that you guys are doing. It's really great, and not a lot of young men your age, are even having these conversations. It's tough, but
We out here.
you just have to find support wherever you can. But yeah, thank you guys for being on here and talking with me. I'm glad to have learned a lot about you guys, and thank you for being open. And hopefully we see each other soon back in the office.
Hopefully, I
For a
hope so.
fact, yeah.